Hello and welcome back to Classics and Ancient Mediterranean Studies 1103. Let's do a series of mythology trivia questions. Start with an easy one. Who is Zeus's grandfather? Put it in the contest forum and enjoy the lecture.
So Ovid paints a pretty bleak picture of love in those portraits of the women in love with the wrong people. But thankfully he pretty much signs off the topic in Book 11 with the story of Ceyx and Alcyone, which I'm going to try to show now both takes away a little bit of the hope we might still have had, and nevertheless at the same time gives us a new kind of hope, even if that hope is impossible. As a special bonus, the story features a character who may be the most thematic character in all of the Metamorphoses, a deity whose name is more or less Mr. Metamorphosis, or Morpheus. Let's set the story up by looking in Book 11 at page 262 in Melville's translation. This is what Alcyone says to Ceyx when Ceyx tells her that he has to go consult the oracle because he's worried about what's going to happen. First he told his plan to his devoted wife Alcyone. Fear froze her to the marrow of her bones. Her face turned pale as boxwood, and her cheeks were wet with flowing tears. 3 times she strove in vain to speak, 3 times her weeping eyes brimmed over, till at last, between her sobs, in loving protest, "Oh, what fault of mine," she cried, "my dearest, has estranged your heart? Your care for me came first. Where is it now? Can you abandon your Alcyone without a qualm? Is now this long, far road your choice? Will absence make you love me more? If it were overland your journey lay, grief would be mine, not fear, anxious and sad, but not afraid. The sea makes me afraid, and ocean's face of gloom. I saw just now wrecked, broken timbers cast upon the shore. I've often read dead names on empty tombs." And if we skip over to the next page, we see the end of this speech. "And still your heart is set, too set to go, my dearest, take me with you. So together we'll face the storms. I'll fear but what I feel. Together what may come we both shall bear. Together on the wide seas we shall fare." Her weeping words distressed her star-born husband, for in his heart love burned no less than hers. Yet still his purpose held to cross the sea, nor would he share with his Alcyone perils unknown, and long he tried to soothe her anxious fears, but urged his cause in vain. What we see in this passage is pretty much just that Ceyx and Alcyone honestly and completely love each other. This is what we think of today as romantic love. Alcyone cares for Ceyx and wants to keep him safe. Ceyx cares for Alcyone and wants to make sure she's happy. This being the Metamorphoses, of course, it can't end well, and it ends in an enormous storm at sea, which is obviously foreshadowed with Alcyone's fears about the sea. And the storm is one of Ovid's great epic set pieces, demonstrating to all of his readers that he can make a storm as big as Virgil's amazing storm in Book 1. And he can make you feel more for it because Aeneas is a very pallid, straightforward, mythic guy type of hero, whereas Ceyx is this wonderful romantic guy who really cares for Alcyone, and that's what we see as he is dying at the end of the storm. Here we are on page 265 of the Melville translation. "And now a leaping wave bursts through the hatches, and as a soldier, boldest of them all, essays to scale a city's battlements time after time and gains at last his hope, and fired by dreams of glory stands alone, one of 1,000 victor on the wall, so when the waves 9 times the ship's steep sides had battered, higher, vaster, mightier rushed the 10th, and battled with the weary bark till down within her captive walls it plunged. Now half the sea was in her, half outside maintained the escalade. All are distraught in terror, as a city is distraught whose walls are mined without and seized within. Skill fails and hearts are faint, and every wave advancing seems a charging, shattering death. Some are in tears, some dazed, some in despair envy a decent burial, some make vows, hands held to heaven, a heaven they cannot see, praying in vain for help, and thoughts of home and children, parents, brothers come to mind, as each remembers all he's left behind. Ceyx recalls his dear Alcyone, Alcyone alone is on his lips, alone he longs for, yet his heart is glad to know she's far away. He longs to look back to his native shore, turn his last gaze homeward, but knows not where home lies. So wild the waters whirl, and the whole firmament is shrouded in the murk of inky clouds that double the drear darkness of the night. The mast is shattered by a whirling blast. The rudder too is shattered. One last wave, victorious, exulting in its spoils, looks down in triumph on the encircling seas, and then, as if from their foundations torn, Pindus and Athos, mountains twain, were flung into the ocean. With a crash so huge, headlong it fell, and by its weight and force overwhelmed the ship and sank her to the depths. And with her swallowed in the swirling gulfs, never to rise again, her hapless crew went to their doom, save for some few who clung to spars and wreckage. Ceyx in his hand that once had held the scepter clutched a plank, and prayed to his wife's father and his own for help in vain, but chiefly on his lips and in his thoughts was his Alcyone. And as he swam he prayed the waves would bear his corpse before her eyes, and her dear hands would tend his burial, and while the waves allow him breath he calls Alcyone, and as they close still murmurs her sweet name. And now a black and towering arch of waters breaks on his head and drowns him in its fall. So the portrait we see of their relationship, from Alcyone trying to stop Ceyx from going, and then from Ceyx dying with Alcyone's name on his lips, is of two people who could not love one another more, who could not be closer in that romantic bond that everybody knows. That ideal of being that close is exactly what Ovid is going to take apart as the story continues.